Greetings, salutations, and welcome to Sportslook, the sports television program for the high plains of West Texas and eastern New Mexico. I'm your host, Doc Elder, and because we on Sportslook believe in the principles of Feng Shui, we are going to put our environment into balance tonight by pairing a veteran coach, Sia Poyer, with a brand new head coach, Ty Hyatt from Greyhound Football. I'll finish up with an overtime, but as always, I'll start out with an Eastern recap. All of the sports teams at Eastern New Mexico University, to borrow the title of a song from the album Jock Jams Volume 3, are ready to go. Greyhound women's soccer, they are going to be the first up. They're going to be playing at high noon on September 2nd at the Greyhound Stadium. And then about 6 hours later, Greyhound football will have their season opener against Central Washington. The very next day, Greyhound volleyball will be in a tournament in Dallas. On the 4th, the cross-country teams will be in Lubbock competing in the Texas Tech Invitational, and Greyhound Rodeo will start out the season on September 16th with their very own College Days Rodeo. Well, that has been your Eastern recap, so we'll clear this out and we'll bring on our first guest, Ty Hyatt from Greyhound Football, right now. Welcome back to Sportslook, and we bring to the set of Sportslook a gentleman that we had on the program last year via Zoom, Ty Hyatt, the new head coach of Eastern New Mexico University football. Coach, officially, welcome to Sportslook.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Doc.
Well, Coach, when we talked to you, you still had the new car smell, kind of just getting used to the experience. Now that you've had a while to think about it, does it still seem kind of unreal at some points that you are a Division II head coach?
It does, yeah. It's probably one of the things that I've talked with a lot of coaches about is that it takes time, to get used to that and with the program. And we have tremendous kids, but it's one of those things that it takes time to get used to those kids because a lot of them have only been around myself and our coaching staff for 3 weeks now, so we're still getting to know each other and all those type things. But yeah, it's sometimes when you sit down and thinking about it, there's so much going on, it kind of seems surreal.
There are things that you think you know going into a job that it turns out aren't really what you thought. Some of them were kind of unpleasant surprises, but let's look at it positively. What's been the most pleasant surprise, something that you didn't really expect that you have found here?
Yeah. Probably one of the things is you just get to meet so many different people. I think one thing that you really look at is, as a head coach, is that you get to deal with people in the community, in the university, those type things. Probably one of the biggest joys that I've had is really you get to influence every kid in the program, every young man, and they come to you when they have issues, good or bad, when they just need to sit down and talk with someone. And to me, that's been really enjoyable because being an offensive coordinator for the past almost 10 years, I had those experiences, but it was just with the offensive side of the ball. And now as being head coach, you get to really influence people and get to help them. And you just really get to see, how people click, like relationships, how important those things are. And that's something that I didn't really put a lot of thought into, but every single day someone new stops in the office and just wants to talk and get to know me. And I really appreciate that.
Well, not only are you getting to know ball players, but you're also getting to know administrators. And there's a gentleman who's even a more recent hire than you. We've got a new athletic director.
Yeah.
And so what's your relationship been with Paul?
Paul has been tremendous. I think he shares the very same values that a lot of our coaches do, with having a lot of new coaches on staff, with a lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm. He's been a coach at an extremely high level, so he understands a sense of urgency. And even though things don't get fixed overnight, as much as you want as a coach, he really understands that from a coaching perspective. And he has been nothing but supportive with me and our coaching staff and our team. And he wants to see us, and I really think he wants to see everyone, in athletics do great things.
And of course, she's been at Eastern New Mexico University for even longer than me, which is really saying something because I've been here forever. But Patrice Caldwell in her first year as president, and what's your relationship been with our boss?
Yeah, President Caldwell has been great to me. It's one of the things that she has been very, very supportive. She came and spoke to the team last week, and which was very supportive, I think, for our players and especially our seniors, having not played football in almost 20 months. Just for her to come out and she was telling all the players about Pop Warner and single wing football and those type things, and the players really enjoyed it. But I think that's important that our players, the program, they see how President Caldwell wants us to be successful, not only when we play on Saturday nights, but we talk about doing well in the classroom and graduating, and not only graduating but networking and being able to go out and be really successful. And it was great to have her out there. She almost seemed like she was ready to suit up. So I love the energy.
A lady of boundless enthusiasm.
Yes, tons of that.
Speaking of which, if you had to say the one thing, the one attribute that a ball player for you has to have, I mean, you'd obviously like to have the entire package, but if you only had one thing that a kid's got to bring to the field for you, what is that?
It has to be relentless energy. Just being like we talk with our players all the time about being just 1% better than you were yesterday. Whatever it is, because we talk with our players that we don't want them to be anything more than the player that they are, that God's given talents that they have, but they need to continually improve. And to improve every day, I really think that you have to have energy. And if you have relentless energy, I think that you can do amazing things. And we always talk about with our energy, energy can be good and bad. You want to drive the energy bus. You don't want to be an energy vampire. So we talk about that with our kids, and I think they're starting to get that.
Obviously, you'd like all three aspects of the game, the offense, the defense, and the special teams, to progress at the same rate. But if you had to say that there's one a little bit ahead of the others at this point, what has been the most rapid advancer?
Yeah, I definitely think our defense has been tremendous. I think our defense, Coach Russell Thompson, he's our defensive coordinator. He's done a tremendous job with our players, and very fortunate to have some great players on defense. And, the biggest thing that we talk about is getting a line and then having 11 people run to the football. And defensively, we do that. And I think that's going to be really a big calling card for us because offensively, we're going to be changing a couple things, how we do things, scheme-wise and those type things. And defense has looked very, very strong during fall camp.
Obviously, every defense is kind of predicated on a slightly different principle. So what do you think? What's the most important level of your defense going to be? Is it going to be in the trenches at the line?
Yeah, definitely our defensive line. That's probably the biggest thing that I think that any coach would look for is that if you're really good at the defensive line, you have a chance to be great on defense. Because if you can stop the run and then when teams decide to throw it and you can really get after the passer, you can really influence the rest of the game. And the thing for us is just winning at the line of scrimmage, both defense and offense. And we're very fortunate to have some good players on both sides of the ball there.
It obviously may change over time, but for the fans that are going to watch your first game against Central Washington, what sort of a defensive front are you going to run?
Yeah, so we'll be a four-down front. One of the things I think a lot of people, when they watch football today, is they see multiple fronts. And we're very fortunate that we have some athletic defensive ends that we can drop into coverage and those type things. So we try to be simple in our teaching, but also line up different ways to be able to confuse the offense. So I think defensively, we're a four-down, but we'll kind of mix it up a little bit.
In the years past, we could have just rebroadcast episodes of Sportslook because the name Wyatt Strand was going to be the quarterback that was talked about every week. Wyatt graduated. We can't use him.
I wish he was back.
NCAA kind of frowns on that. So a couple of quarterbacks vying for the starting position?
We do. So we have a handful of freshmen that are going to be vying for the position, and that's probably going to be one of the positions that's going to be some growing pains for us as a program. And that's why really we're going to depend on our defense, quite a bit during the beginning of the season, middle of the season, going through it, because when you're breaking in a brand new quarterback, and Wyatt was a 4-year starter, but very similar when he was probably a freshman. You have to do things to protect that player, protect the team. And so really with us, just being able to put him in a good situation and grind out some games, maybe make the other team a little frustrated and just get it to the fourth quarter.
And it's kind of interesting. I was smiling as you were talking about that because Wyatt Strand's first game his freshman year was against a Missouri school that was rated in the top 25. And Central Washington may not be top 25, but they got top 25
Yeah.
votes. So
Mhm.
somebody's going to have the kind of Wyatt Strand introduction to college football.
Yeah, they will. And that's probably the thing that we've talked with our freshmen the most in that position is that there's a lot going on. When the bullets are flying, it's a little bit different than practice. And, again, just trying to keep it simple so that they can play fast and put us in a good position to be successful because I think offensive line wise we have some really good players. And if we can do some things to help out the quarterback to keep it simple, and again, just really kind of make the game ugly in a sense and really grind this thing out, I think we have a chance.
And of course, in a perfect world, within a relatively short amount of time, you'll get the type of ball players you want to be able to run your offensive scheme. For a while, it's going to be kind of a mix and match. Some guys that were part of one system trying to work into a new system. So offense is probably going to be kind of day to day, maybe
Yeah.
even quarter to quarter.
Yeah, no, it definitely will. And that's the thing we've talked with our kids is not to get frustrated with the process of how everything going with which today it's very hard to lose sight of that because when we live in a day and age of social media and the internet and you have access to everything, great things take time, so we just have to make sure that our championship habits that we have every single day that we don't lose sight of those things. And if we continue to do those things, we'll be okay down the road. It'll just take time. We got to be patient.
And we talked about the fact that Wyatt Strand was a given at quarterback. Well, we had a young man named Tyler Vargas who was a given when it came to special teams. And from what I understand from conversations with you, we've got a pretty good place kicker. We've got a pretty good punter to try and replace him.
We do, yeah. Our kicker, Cooper Hamilton, I think he's probably one of the best in the country. No one knows about him. In our scrimmage the other night, he made a 51-yard field goal. Our punter, Patrick Talbot, he's been doing great things. He can pro style, he can rugby. And then the one thing that a lot of people don't think about is the long snapper until you're a coach and that first punt or that first field goal attempt or point after. But Travis Oxley, he's been solid with long snapping. And so special teams wise, I think that's going to be the second phase that we hang our hat on, trying to create explosive plays with block kicks, big returns, those type things. And I think that we have the athletes to do it.
I was just going to say, I hope for your sake that we have a lot of punt return opportunities.
Yeah.
Kickoff return opportunities, not necessarily
Yes.
always the
Yeah,
best
yeah.
thing, but so when the other team is going to punt, which we hope is frequently, who's going to be returning kicks?
Well, Justin Manyweather was a Lone Star Conference, all-conference player in 2019. He's a transfer. Really happy with him because, like a lot of kids, he chose to stay. He could have graduated, he could have gone on, chose to stay in the program, which means a lot to me, being just a first-year head coach, that you have kids like that. And we have a handful of kids that decided to do that. I just think it speaks volumes to what Coach Lee built beforehand with this team and this program, kids wanting to be here. But when the ball is in his hands, he's probably one of the most electric players, I think, in the conference, in the region, just a really outstanding player.
Well, Coach, in the 30 seconds we've got left for this segment, if there's one takeaway that you want people to walk out of Greyhound Stadium on September 2nd with having watched your game, what's the takeaway?
The thing that we really want to see as a coaching staff is that our kids are tough. That when they play Eastern New Mexico, when Central comes into town, that it was the toughest team that they played all season, and that our fans see that, this team is gritty, that they're relentless, that they're playing together. I think those are the things that we want to see because if we do that, we have a chance to be successful.
Well, Coach, congratulations on becoming the head coach and best of luck against Central Washington.
Thank you.
All right, well, that is going to wrap up our first interview segment. So what we'll do is we'll clear the set and we'll bring in Sia Poyer from Greyhound Volleyball right now. Welcome back to Sportslook, and we welcome back to Sportslook the head coach of Greyhound Volleyball, Sia Poyer. And Coach, welcome back to Sportslook.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
Well, Coach, we could have talked volleyball last year all we wanted, but we were never going to have highlights or anything like that because it was the year where sports just didn't take place for you.
Right, right. It was interesting, frustrating when we first started because we weren't able to do anything in the fall. But we were fortunate that university was, allowed our kids to come back in the spring, and really all we did was practice, work out, classes, and just kind of worked out in our little bubble. So it wasn't too bad.
Well, it had to be frustrating because if you look back to the last season where volleyball did play, the second segment going through the conference, the second time you play teams, you had some really good success. You were building on some things.
Yeah, yeah, and I guess the good thing is, some of those kids are going to have the opportunity to come back. And for instance, like with Jasmine Gannon, I mean, basically my leader, my number one player. She's done, but she's coming back as a grad student. So I mean, that's those things are out of our control. So all we can do, like I said, the fact that we had the opportunity to have our kids on campus and work out, especially because we have half of my kids are freshmen. I mean, they're sophomores now. Um, but just getting them on campus to work out, be here, even though our classes were still online, but just having them here was a big plus for us.
And how does that work? I mean, for people that may not understand, I mean, normally there are eligibility rules that apply, but things a little bit different because of the pandemic.
Yeah, yeah. So the NCAA basically granted a waiver, so all those student athletes with COVID waiver. So if they want to play their extra year, they can. I have three seniors, and they're just going to graduate. I mean, they're already there, and it's they're going to after conversations with them. I want them to do what's best for them, but they're just going to move on. But they have that extra year if they wanted to stay and use it.
In terms of the incoming class, the young ladies that would have had their first year competition
Correct.
last year will be having their first competition. Did you primarily go after one position, or do we have new players at every position?
Well, we lost quite a few. I mean, really, just about every position. Yeah, just about every position is, it's in that recruiting class. From middles, outside, opposites, setter, libero, some scholarships, some walk-ons. But they're all going to play a big part in, for us this year. But and we wouldn't lose a lot, but because of COVID, it kind of presented me a unique opportunity to bring in more numbers, and then just kind of broke up my scholarships to be able to have all those kids on the roster.
Well, obviously, there are two ways to rebuild a roster. One is to go after freshmen. The other way is to recruit junior college transfers or transfers from another
Right.
university. In a perfect world, what would be the balance?
Well, it just kind of depends on what you need. There's certain positions where, for instance, like the setter position is so important. If I have the opportunity to get a transfer setter, just because of the experience that they're bringing in, probably a good thing to do. But it all kind of depends on my needs. But like I was saying earlier about the unique opportunity with COVID, because I was actually able to have 3 transfers join us on our roster this year, and they're going to be big help for us.
Are they junior college transfers or
One
from
junior
universities?
college, Deja Rodriguez, she's JUCO, and then the other 2 are from 4-year schools.
I can see that in some ways, well, in a lot of ways, the pandemic and the year absence is a bad thing when it
Yeah.
comes to sports. But it seems to me like maybe your young ladies might be even hungrier than if they had had a season last year. It's been 2 years since they've
Right,
had a chance.
exactly. Yes, I mean, they are. preseason polls came out, and we were on the other end of the poll, but I don't really pay too much attention to that. So, but I know our kids are paying attention, and I know they're using that as a motivation. Um, but the bottom line is we didn't get to play a year, and it's hard to catch up with that. And again, there's nothing we can do about it other than prepare as best as we can and look forward for season to start.
Speaking of the preseason poll, there were a lot of teams that were listed in that poll because there are a lot of teams in the Lone Star Conference now
Right.
that play volleyball.
Oh my
18,
gosh,
if I'm right.
18. Yeah. And it's something else that we have to get used to, just because it's always been home and away. But now that we've gotten so big, we can't do that anymore. So, it's just a single round robin. We'll play some schools, just depending on what the schedule is telling us to do. So some of the, for instance, like our big rival, West Texas, we have them on the road or at their place this year, and then in 2022 they'll come to us.
It obviously doesn't leave much wiggle room for scheduling non-conference. So
Right.
what are you doing non-conference?
Yeah, I mean, so like with volleyball, we have the conference schedule, and then they give us the first 2 weekends to go play tournaments. In the past, funny you mentioned Coach McGuire, you can go to, your first weekend can be like a kind of easy tournament just to help your team, get ready. And then second weekend, second tournament, a little bit harder, maybe play some regionally or nationally ranked schools. But you don't have that option anymore. Regional ranking is so huge, and because our conference has expanded, those teams that used to be in the heartland now, those are the teams we played to get ready for our conference schedule. Don't have that option anymore. So just from the get-go, you've got to be ready to go. Just because, for instance, our first tournament, we're at Dallas Baptist. We opened Arkansas Tech, Dallas Baptist. Arkansas Tech is a pretty good regionally ranked team. And then Westminster and I forgot the fourth team. But that's, if we beat Arkansas Tech, that helps us big time. And then the second weekend, we're at a Midwestern States tournament. They're conference schools, conference school, and we're playing them. But we're also going to play 2 nationally ranked schools at that tournament. So and when we show up, you pretty much got to be ready to go.
Coach, you talked about the fact you do have some young ladies,
Right.
players that are coming back. Do you have assistant coaches coming back?
Katie Burnett, my number one. She's been with me now, going on her third. Ooh, gosh, I hope third year. Just an awesome assistant. And then for the first year, actually second year, but she was here last year during COVID. I have a graduate assistant, Erin Moss. She actually played her college ball at Western New Mexico University, who was in our conference, and but originally from Hawaii, but just awesome assistant coaches. I mean, it helps that they're both counseling majors, because I need a lot of that.
Don't we all?
Yes.
Well, Coach, it's going to be a while before we can actually see you play at home.
Yeah.
But when it finally comes time that people can go to Greyhound Arena and watch you play, if there's one takeaway, one thing that you hope people will walk away from the arena after having watched your young ladies play, what do you hope the takeaway is?
I've got a great group. I mean, they're actually very, very talented. Like I said, they're just not battle tested, and I'm talking mainly about my freshmen, because they're going to be a big part of our lineup. I mean, my 2 opposite hitters, Michaela and Callie, I mean, they're both freshmen. I mean, luckily they play for the same club, but both very talented young ladies, but they're still freshmen. But we're an exciting group. I know they're super excited just to not just play, but play their first home game September 21st against New Mexico Highlands. And they just want to. Like, I think to them, it's almost like a reset button. Like you mentioned, rebuilding, And, we went through COVID. Even before COVID, I wasn't able to coach in 2018 season or 19 season
19,
just
yeah.
because of some health reasons. So it's almost like they've been, haven't done anything in a couple of years, So they're I mean, I know our program has been around for a while, but they want to, like start their own legacy, and they're just excited about playing. And you mentioned our first home game. We actually have our green and silver scrimmage this week, Friday, at 6:30 p.m.
Well, Coach, we wish you the best of luck, and let's prove some preseason experts wrong.
Thank you so much.
All right, well, that is going to wrap up the interview segment of Sportslook. So what we'll do is we'll clear the set, and I will finish up with an overtime right now. What was the coolest thing that happened sports-wise since the last episode we did in May? Was it the Milwaukee Bucks winning their first NBA championship in 50 years? Was it Colin Morikawa winning the U.S. Open golf tournament in the first U.S. Open golf tournament that he ever played in? No, I think you'd have to look to the Summer Olympics, and I think you'd have to look at Simone Biles. Simone Biles, I'm sure you're aware of the story, had what are called the twisties. It's an occurrence that happens to gymnasts sometimes where they just lose their sense of balance when they're in the air. And she quite rightfully knew that she was going to hurt her team if she competed, and so she withdrew from competition for the first few events. But she knew she could help out her team in the balance beam. She came back, and what did she do? She won her country a bronze medal. That's her 7th Olympic medal. That ties her with the great Shannon Miller all time. So Simone, thanks for being a great example to all of us. Well, that will wrap up an overtime, and that will wrap up an episode of Sportslook. I'd like to thank my guests, Ty Hyatt from Greyhound Football and Sia Poyer from Greyhound Volleyball. I'd like to thank my floor crew. I had a veteran director tonight, Mr. Zach. So for all those aforementioned people, this is Doc Elder saying, so long.